I haven't slept since 2023. Growing up, I had two choices in life. I could follow in my father's footsteps as a farm equipment maintenance worker. It was a decent job with decent pay, but I always got this sense of dread whenever I walked by his workshop. It was this big windowless building in a pale green color, and I always had this feeling that if I stayed there for too long, that place would eat me alive. So I went with the other choice in life, my mother. She was always larger than life, and she wanted me to be too. She was all about the hustle. When she and my father went separate ways, she took me and my sister across the country to Bangkok. She was the embodiment of Ot Prio Y Kin Wan, roughly translated to endure the sourness and enjoy the sweetness later. She would take any job at any time and claw her way upward. So my sister and I turned out the same. We would work, study, and socialize. We were supposed to be everything at once: smart, strong, cultural, and opinionated. I studied computer science at night and worked delivery during the day. I got a pretty good eye for traffic, so I can make it around the city without fearing for my life. That's easier said than done. Traffic laws around here seem to be more of a suggestion rather than law. I also did the odd job making websites for friends, family, and acquaintances. That would eat up most of my weekend nights. And finally, the one job that never paid me anything: looking out for my sister. My sister Isara worked as a club and event promoter in the inner city. She mostly worked weekends and nights, and I'm the only one she trusts to watch her back. If someone bothered her, I'd be on call. If she needed a sudden ride home, I'd be on call. I'd get yelled at for being late, or for not responding fast enough, or for 1,000 different reasons. It was by far the worst job I'd ever had. But family is family. I would be working so much that the only time my friends would see me was when I came around to pick up Isara. They started to call me, or lurk, something you say when it's time to close for the night. I was the closing time guy. When I showed up, it was time to go home. Not the most fun nickname to be stuck with in your early 20s. When my mother passed from pancreatic cancer in 2020, I just turned 21. I was put in a position where I had to support both myself and my sister economically. Sure, she pulled part of her weight too, but she was looking ahead. She wanted to work in cosmetology, especially in movies and TV shows. That would take money and time. So for a while there, I had a lot of sudden weight put on my shoulders. Studies, work, more work, and being there for Isara. I barely slept, and when I did, I'd wake up at the slightest sound. I was so used to sleeping lightly, waiting for my sister to call for a pickup. But I didn't have a lot of choice. I had to keep going for everyone's sake. So I made a plan. I just had to make it until I was done with my studies. I looked for temporary solutions. I'd take caffeine pills, but they ended up giving me a stomachache. I tried this dextrose drink from a local pharmacy, but that thing almost gave me arrhythmia. I didn't want to try any heavier stuff, so I kinda gave up hope. Then I met a guy named Somiat. Somiat is a nice guy in the wrong kind of business. About 10 years older than me, but 30 years older at heart. To this day, I'm not sure what he really does, apart from co-managing a couple of downtown clubs. I think he buys things from places you shouldn't, some kind of gray area importer. He was a part owner of a club where Isara worked on the weekend. The first time I met him, he was sitting outside the club with a cold beer, having a cigarette. He didn't look like the owner, so I sat down next to him to tie my shoes. He looked me up and down. "You just gonna sit down like that?" he asked. "You got an appointment?" "I need an appointment for a chair?" "For my chair, yeah." "You the boss?" "I'm a boss, yeah." I was too tired to care, and frankly, getting my sister fired from that place would have made my life easier. So I looked right back at him. You don't look like a boss to me. I didn't know if he was gonna hit me or hire me. But he ended up belly laughing and offering me a cigarette, so I guess I made the right choice. I would spend about 1 or 2 nights a week at Somiat's club. He'd offer me a job, but the pay was awful and I was busy with other things. I literally didn't have enough hours of the day to work for him. I think that was for the best though. He was a great guy to hang out with, but he must have been an awful boss. Cheap bastard. Somiat had some sympathy for me though. I was working hard to make ends meet, and he respected the hustle. He offered me a couple of side gigs. For example, picking up leftover credit cards at ATMs. There's a kind of ATM that takes a long time for the card to come back out, so a lot of tourists think it ate them, so they leave the card behind. Somiat paid a little for each card I could bring him, so I would walk around and pick them up while waiting for Isara to finish work. Every little bit helps. We developed a good friendship. I would show up an hour or so before Isara needed a pickup just to hang out with Somiat. We'd usually just talk about movies, cars, girls, whatever came to mind. I didn't have a lot of people in my life I could just talk to about nothing, and I don't think he did either. We'd usually end up having a beer and chew betel nuts. They're these nuts that you wrap in a leaf and chew. It gives you a pick-me-up that makes your mouth burn. It sums up Somiat pretty well, legal but spicy. But things took a turn when I was invited to a private party of his. See, I'd been up for 27 hours straight at that point. I'd been working on a large project for my computer science class, and I'd been trying to get a couple of extra hours in at the delivery company. That and a client needed me to redo their homepage after it got hacked. It was a perfect storm of a lot of little things all at once, and it drove me to exhaustion. But I still got to Somiat's party. He had a nice place outside of town. He'd invited some people from the club and some business associates. He had these parties about once every 6 months or so. It was a way to show appreciation and brag a little. Still, Somiat had pulled out all the stops. He'd felt sorry for me seeing me work so hard, and he'd brought a guy there from a research institute. They needed people for a data entry job, and he thought it'd be my kind of thing. Problem is, I was so tired I looked like I was on drugs. I didn't even understand the guy was offering me a paid position. As the party died down, Somiat took me aside and sat me down for a chat. We chewed some betel nuts and he took off his sunglasses. The man didn't look me in the eyes a lot, so I knew something was up. "I worry about you," he said. "You're working too hard." "I'm sorry," I said. "It's not that I don't appreciate this, but I had so much to do." "Then tell me," he continued. "Tell me how I can help." "You don't need to do anything," I said. "I'm just glad to have a friend, you know?" I could see the wheels turn in his head. His eyes welled up a little. He gave me a hug and took me out to the veranda overlooking the city. He patted me on the back. "You deserve better," he said. "I'll get you something better." The following weekend I got a text from Somiat. He was excited to show me something. He usually had something to share, but this time seemed different. I was a bit anxious about seeing him, but it was a nice change of pace. So that Saturday I was invited into the club. I went straight past the bouncer, through the dance floor and into the back rooms. From there, I followed a corridor to a small office at the back of the building. After all I'd seen from Somiat, I expected something grander, but it was just a little office with an old laptop, a USB fan, a couple chairs and a shitty TV in the corner. All accentuated by a couple of early 2000s posters of women in bikinis posing with cars. Somiat was smiling ear to ear and waved me over. He opened a safe under his desk and pulled out a small box of white pill bottles. They were all sealed and unmarked, except for a small blue sunflower print on the cap. He sat me down and took a bottle out of his pocket to show me. "This is gonna help," he said. "Trust me. I don't do drugs, boss." "I know you don't. This isn't that." He showed me his phone and a conversation he'd had with the guy from the party, the one from the research institute. Apparently, he'd managed to get his hands on a couple of cases of an off-market stimulant. "I tried it myself," he said. "Going on 2 weeks now. It's a little miracle." "What does it do? What's the catch?" "No need to sleep anymore," he smiled. "1 pill you're good for at least 18 hours. No way. You might need another hour or 2 to recover when you finally go to bed, but apart from that, it's perfect. Doesn't make your piss smell, doesn't fuck up your hair, nothing." "No way," I repeated. Too good to be true. Somiat sat down at his desk across from me, giving me a long look. "You won't let me get you a better job," he said. "Let me get you this. As a friend." I could tell he was being genuine. You could say a lot about Somiat, but he'd always been honest with me. I swallowed my fears and picked up one of the pills. "I don't know," I said. "There's gotta be a catch." "Never more than 1 a day," he said. "Or you'll get sick. And no more than 2 days at a time. Maybe 3, but then you'll probably get a headache. Oh, and no drugs." "What do you mean?" "There's a list of things drugs it reacts with. But you don't do that stuff, so you're good." "What about caffeine?" "As long as you don't pour stuff like." Somiat picked up a small piece of paper and looked it over, reading from a list. "Arecaline, cocaine hydrochloride, diacetylmorphine, or methamphetamine, you're good." There goes my Friday night. "Funny," Somiat scoffed. "If you don't want it, it's fine, but dash." No, I'll try one." And so I did. Taking that first pill was like breathing in after a deep dive. I felt lighter but not high. I was just well rested, ready to take on the day. But there was also a slight chill to it, like a cold breath sweeping across my nerves. I looked at Somiat like I was seeing him for the first time. He got up and slapped his hands together with a grin. "I knew it," he said. "I knew this'd be it." "How much?" I asked. "For a bottle." "How much?" "Take it," he smiled, pushing over the whole case. "Guy owed me a favor." "Really, you're just giving it away?" "I'm just glad to have a friend." That night was the first time I stuck around to party with Somiat for real. The man was a force of nature. He downed shots like they were water. He knew all the best food vendors on the block by name, and he'd ping-pong from after-party to after-party without breaking a sweat. I was just along for the ride. We ended up drunk on a bench watching the sun rise. Not a blink of tiredness in our eyes. Our day was just getting started. No need for betel nuts to keep us going. I wouldn't need those ever again. "Next, you're getting a woman," he murmured. "Then a job. A great job. You can fix anything, huh? That's why I'm the boss." "I don't want to owe you anything," I said. "You get that, right? You don't owe me anything." "Kinda feels like I do." He asked me to show him my phone. I did, and he scrolled down to his number on the contact list. He tapped it, hovering his finger over the delete button. "You can delete me today and never call me again, and that's up to you." "Really? Really?" He handed me the phone back and turned his attention to the sun. "But for as long as you feel like it, I'm here," he continued. "No strings. No strings." He shrugged and slid his final beer my way. "It's just nice to be the good guy for once." The next night, lying in my bed, I was scared. I had no idea how my body would respond. It was a make-or-break moment where I'd find out if Somiat had screwed me over, or if he'd really helped me out. I had a whole case of those pills stashed away in the closet, more than enough to keep me going for months. But I took his advice. Every 2 or 3 days or so, I'd give it a rest. So when I went to sleep that night, I didn't know what to expect. I had strange dreams. I dreamt I woke up in this barren world, with a dead tree towering in the distance. There were no stars in the sky. It was desolate but peaceful in a way, and I dreamt that there was someone there in the dark. Someone looking for me. But I woke up long before they found me. I was a bit worked up, but it was just a dream. Those fleeting images rolled out of my mind faster than it took for me to make breakfast. From that moment on, I decided to give these things a go. I would rest every 3 days or so, but until then, I was constantly on the go. I could work as many hours as I wanted. I could be up all night, finishing projects left and right. I never missed a call from my Sarah. I could keep up with demands, and I could do it comfortable, without side effects. Sure, whenever I crashed, I'd dream about that place again. The dead tree reaching for the moon. The desolate ruins. And somewhere out in the eternal night, something was looking for me. But it never had the time to find me. I'd always wake up long before it did. It was comfortable, efficient, and I could do it all. I had time to work a little with Somiat. Not anything big, just odd jobs here and there. He was fair but didn't pay much. But then again, I was making more money than I knew how to spend. I got a second chance at an interview with Somiat's guy at the Research Institute, and that time around, I nailed it. It was just a low-level data entry job, but I could do it remotely, and it paid almost twice as much as my delivery job. I had to brush up on my English, but that wasn't a big deal. Isara and I had to learn it early on in our lives. My mother made sure of it. Isara had saved up enough money for her cosmetology classes, so I got some more time to focus on other things. I invested some time in a startup app with some guys from my classes, and we made some solid progress. Overall, things looked pretty good. Weeks turned to months, and months eventually turned to an entire year. I still had plenty of pills left, and I got into a healthy routine. I slept better, I ate better, and I had so much more time on my hands. It got to the point where I couldn't imagine going back to life without those pills. Still, I couldn't help but wonder what that place in between the wakeful world and my dreams was. That place in the starless night, with the dead tree in the distance. Who were the dark shapes roaming the fields of black sand, and who was out there looking at me? I wouldn't think about it too much. I chalked it up as a weird side effect, but not much else. It didn't affect my everyday life, so why should I care? Fast forward to 2023. I was co-owner of a small company. No more data entry. We had an office and 5 employees. My nickname still stuck around, but it was more or less sarcastic. I was no longer the guy who showed up at the end of it all. I was the first in line. I would plan my come-downs in a way that people never noticed. I had this reputation of working around the clock, and people just couldn't figure it out. I didn't share my secret with anyone. I figured there would be some serious consequences if those pills got in the wrong hands. My sister got a nice job at one of the local malls. One of the really big ones, not just any old mall. It was very well paid, and she could support herself more than enough. She ended up moving in with a guy, and I got a place of my own. I could finally take a step up and get myself something nice. I still spent time with Somiat. He was the only other person in the world that knew of the pills. He'd stopped taking them though. He found them too distracting when it came to keeping a schedule. He was going steady with a lady named Wan Wan, and he hated seeing her go to bed on her own. It was surprisingly sweet. and more pills for me, so win-win. In February of 2023, my sister got married. It was bad timing since I had a huge project to work on at the time. So even with all my available time, it was still not enough. So I had to do something Soumyat advised against. I had to keep going for 5 days straight. Just 2 days more than the ordinary 3, but still. Now, I didn't immediately notice anything. It worked just fine. But when I finally crashed, after almost a full week without sleep, I had the most awful nightmare of my life. Not only was I back there in that desolate space, I could feel it. The black sand creeping into my shoes. The howling of people in pain. I thought I heard gunfire too. What little vegetation lived there was twisted into a midnight blue, just like the blue sunflower on the cap of the bottle. But this time there wasn't just something in the dark looking for me. No, it was hunting. I have this vivid memory of crawling through the sands of an old ruin, hearing something closing in. Despite the sand, it was wet, viscous. It made this disgusting sound like a crowd of large men struggling for breath all at once. I would hear it touch its way across the ruins looking for me, and everywhere it touched, something sizzled like burning acid. It tried to speak. I know it did, but it couldn't. It had too many tongues and they all tried to speak at once. Eventually it found me. I couldn't look. I couldn't breathe. I could feel the size of it without even looking as it loomed over me. I tried making myself small, but it didn't matter. It sighed, like it had enjoyed a cold glass of water on a warm summer's day. It was so pleased to find me. And as it moved closer, I heard something dripping, sizzling into the sand. There was a powerful smell of ammonia and something akin to mothballs. It touched my arm and it burned into my skin. It burned so bad that I woke up. And when I did, I had a burn. A coin-sized black mark with gangrenous flesh tightening the skin of the arm, stinging with every flex of my triceps. That place was real. That thing had been real. For a full week after that, I kept feeling like I'd been seconds from death. I had a doctor check out my arm, but he couldn't make sense of it. It was an acid burn, but it behaved like a frostbite. In the end, he had to make a small procedure to remove the necrotized skin, but it was overall fine. I just had to keep it clean and bandaged, and be prepared for a nasty scar. But that thing had been so vivid. Days later, I could still smell it. I remember this one time when I was taking a shower when I had to turn off the water. I thought I heard something sizzling in the other room. Wrapped in a towel, I peeked through the door, hoping against hope that I was just being paranoid. That time I was. But what about next time? I swore off the pills. I was in a good place and I didn't need them anymore. I'd gained everything I wanted. Sure, it'd take some time to get back to a normal schedule, but I couldn't go back there. No wonder we weren't supposed to take more than 2 or 3 pills in a sequence. If I'd been there a second longer, it would have taken my whole arm. Another hour and I'd be dead. I decided to give it all back to Soumyat. By that time he had expanded his business a bit, but he'd calmed down as a person. He was a changed man. He was engaged to Wanwan and he was trying to turn his life around. In fact, we hadn't seen each other for some time. He was a bit surprised when I called about meeting him in his office. I met Soumyat in his downtown office late one Friday night. It was a strange feeling. There were people everywhere, but I still felt like I was alone. There was this thought crawling around in the back of my head, whispering to me that if I slowed down and really listened, I could hear that sizzling acid as it burned into the asphalt. So I kept my head down and tried to get into the music. The bass. The beat of the party. But it was all just superficial. I couldn't help but think back on that thing. Every time I heard a cough, a sneeze, someone clearing their throat, I thought that was it. It found me. I could feel the squelch of it in my ear, almost like a heat. But I made my way through the club and joined Somiat in his office. I put the pills on his desk and sat down across from him. "I'm done with them," I said. "They do something to you?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. I'm done." "All right, no worries," Somiat nodded. "You okay?" "Not really." Despite not hanging out for a while, Somiat was his usual self. He put the pills away, sat down next to me and handed me a beer. He'd installed a mini fridge next to his desk. The damn thing made more noise than his ceiling fan. "I'm not gonna ask about it," he said. "You look like shit." "I feel like shit." "What happened to your arm?" "Frostbite." Somiat snorted but saw that I wasn't laughing. He opened his mouth but closed it again. Whatever had happened to me, he knew better than to laugh. Instead he leaned over, looking worried. "Fuck the pills," he said. "You're sticking with me now, all right?" "All right." He made his best effort to keep me company that night. We had drinks, met some people, and sang some karaoke. I almost got into an arm wrestling competition with a drunk Dutch guy. It was nice, and for a moment I didn't hear those awful noises. I didn't smell those smells. Later that night I could feel myself growing tired. Usually I would pop one of the pills, but I settled for a classic instead, beetle nuts. Somiat and I wrapped them up and bit down. It was nice to feel that familiar crunch and burn. It was a return to form in a way. It was the way things were supposed to be. By the end of the night we ended up on that same bench watching the sun. But this time he was exhausted. He was nodding off over and over as he waited for a friend to pick him up. I was, strangely, not tired in the slightest. "Maybe you still got some of it in your system," Somiat mumbled. "Makes sense, right? Bigger doses take longer." "Probably," I nodded. "Or maybe it was the nuts." "Nah, they don't work like that. They're a kick, not a trip." By the time Somiat's friend came around to pick him up, he could barely keep his eyes open. He lumbered into the passenger seat and looked back at me one final time. "I'm getting rid of them," he said. "Don't worry. It's done. You'll be fine." But I wasn't feeling fine. Or rather, I was. But that was the problem. I went home and I still couldn't sleep. I went an entire day and I still couldn't sleep. I hadn't taken any pills for some time, but I was still up and about. I was getting worried, but I didn't know where to turn. Had I taken a pill by accident? I reached out to Somiat's contact at the Research Institute. But we couldn't talk about it over email since it was monitored and this was hardly legal. So we decided to meet downtown later in the week. For the next few days I was a wreck. I kept thinking about that place and that thing. I'd been up for so many days that I didn't want to think about what would happen when I returned. It would be waiting for me. I could feel it, hear it. I met the man from the Research Institute in early morning. I paid for his coffee, but I didn't get any myself. He was an American in his 50s with a shaved head and a well-trimmed goatee. He hid behind a black baseball cap and wasn't much for small talk. I decided to get right to it. I explained the problem. After taking a larger than usual dose, I couldn't sleep anymore. He didn't look that surprised. "That only happens when you take stimulants," he said. "Didn't he warn you?" "I haven't taken anything," I said. "I don't do drugs." "You sure?" he asked. "Nothing." "Does alcohol count?" I asked. "Beetle nuts? Caffeine? What?" "No, that dash." He stopped for a second. His eyes turned away as he thought about it. He brought out his phone and checked something, then nodded. "Beetle nuts," he repeated. "That's high in erekaline. High in what? Arecaline. That's the first thing on the list. That's the worst one. Wait, what? He adjusted his glasses and read the list out loud. He was right, arecaline was the first thing on the list. Right there next to hard narcotics. What does it mean? I asked. What's gonna happen? He leaned back in his chair, sipped his coffee, and adjusted his glasses. We made this in our lab back in Vietnam. When the lab got shut down, it was scheduled to be burned. But we never got around to it. So you make drugs? Is that it? It's not a drug, he explained. It isolates a particular chemical element. It was originally made to nurture a type of deep-sea fish to gestate a kind of rough metal powder. What? Fish? I don't dash. Look, it's not a stimulant. It's not a drug. It puts a part of you in another place, and while it's there, your body becomes disconnected from a few of your basic needs. In most cases, sleep. So what does it mean? What's gonna happen to me? He leaned forward, looking over the edge of his silver-rimmed glasses. Arecaline amplifies the effect by a magnitude of about 100. It's one of the reasons they had to shut down the development. At that magnitude, there's no telling what's gonna happen. Wait, 100? So I'm going to dash. You're gonna be awake for, maybe a year. Maybe 4. And then something I can't even imagine is going to happen to you. There was nothing else to say. He had no advice to give, there were no solutions. The damage was done. I almost burst into tears right then and there. My hands were shaking. I would be awake for years and then, something he couldn't even imagine. If the effect of 2 pills too many caught me a burn on the arm, what the hell was going to happen after 100? 200? The bandage itched and I could hear the sizzling from a nearby kitchen. But it wasn't from the kitchen. It was that thing. And it was waiting for me. It was just a matter of time. I tried everything, but there was nothing to be done. There was nothing wrong with me on paper. I was healthier than ever, in fact. The lab in Vietnam that the man spoke of had been shut down, and all traces of it was dismantled. I had a vague lead to an investor in the U.S., but it didn't lead me anywhere. I had to sell my share in the company. It stung, but the payout was more than generous. It would keep me afloat for a couple of months, maybe a year, while I tried to work something out. But it was a desperate search for nothing. Even the man from the research institute would drop off the grid. And when strange men in suits started asking my friends and family about me, I knew I'd taken a step too far. This was in February 2023. Every day from that point forward has been a nightmare. In May that same year, I lost the need to eat. It's like my body entered a kind of metastasis. I could sit in a room for days on end, staring at a wall, and nothing would change. I would feel nothing. I would experience nothing. And I wouldn't care. And with no food, I'd need no bathroom breaks. Sometime in July, I lost the need to breathe. I would forget to do it for days on end, and my lungs would deflate to the point where it hurt to use them. After a couple of weeks, I couldn't talk without bleeding anymore. In late October that year, I stopped blinking. I would forget to do it for long periods of time, and dust would settle in my eyes. It didn't hurt, but it was uncomfortable to wash them, so I just ended up keeping them closed. Something happened to my skin. I think it stopped needing sunlight. Over a couple of days I grew so pale you could almost see through me. My fingernails would fall off. Without using my mouth and jaw, my teeth fell out of my skull. I barely noticed. I had to move in with my sister to care for me. She couldn't understand what was happening, and neither could anyone else. She would force me to go to the doctors, and they couldn't make sense of it. Whenever they mentioned specialists, Some anonymous group would throw enough money at them to look the other way. But all of that was just cake topping. It was all just physical things. It didn't compare to my thoughts and feelings. I would feel closer and closer to that dark place. That space beyond where that thing waited for me. It hungered for me. All the needs and wants I'd lost, it had gained. It was hungry, tired, sunburnt, and in constant pain. And it wanted to give it all back to me. To consume me with it. If I just listened hard enough, I could hear it panting. Like an eager dog waiting for master to put food in his bowl. Ready to tear into me unashamed. Sometimes I forget what world I'm in. I'll get up and wander around, feeling the walls, imagining them as crumbling ruins. My sister once caught me wandering into the street. If my lungs had worked, she would have heard me begging that thing to leave me. Instead, I got hit by a car. And I didn't feel a thing, laying crumbled into a pile by the side of the road. The things people say feel like a distant dream. I have no need for serotonin, so joy is something of the past. Sometimes I can hear the music and cheering across the city, but it feels like they're mocking me. But the fear, that's still there. It may be the only emotion that remains. Now it's 2025. I think I attended Somiat's wedding, but I can't know for sure. I think I was there. I didn't see or hear. I can't feel anything when I move my arms anymore. There was a nice smell. I think he offered me some cake. I tried to smile at him, but I don't know if I did it. I've written this with great effort over several weeks. My sister has helped. She washes my eyes, and I would look at the letters for her to type. If I stretch a little, I can get enough air in my lungs to make a noise or a short word. Sometimes at night, when my sister is not here, I think I can hear something outside. Not just in my mind, but on the street. I think they are watching me. I think they're curious about what happens when I got to sleep. Or maybe they're scared. It's funny in a way. They call me Lurk, closing time. It's fitting. I can't help but think I should have stayed with my father, maintaining farm equipment. I wish I could dream of seeing those pale green walls again. I had to finish this in a hurry. I think the effect is wearing off like the man said it would. Yesterday I yawned. Today I'm tired. Good night, Bangkok.